There is a quiet conversation happening among men in their late 20s, 30s, and early 40s. A conversation that rarely makes it into mainstream dialogue because it challenges the narrative that relationships are automatically a man's sanctuary. Many of these men entered adulthood believing that love would bring peace, that partnership would feel like coming home after a long war with the world, that intimacy would soften life's sharp edges. Instead, some of them found themselves more anxious inside relationships than they ever were alone. They found themselves walking on eggshells, negotiating moods, defending their character, explaining their intentions, and slowly losing the stillness that once defined them. When these men speak about how women destroy peace in relationships, what they are often describing is not hatred, but confusion. They are describing the gradual erosion of calm, the slow replacement of clarity with emotional turbulence, and the heavy realization that being single can sometimes feel freer than being loved. Peace for a man is rarely loud. It is not dramatic. It is not poetic. It is simple. It is coming home and not being interrogated. It is expressing a thought without it being weaponized later. It is feeling trusted when you have given no reason to be doubted. It is knowing that silence does not equal punishment. Many men are built to handle stress outside the home. They can compete in hostile workplaces, grind through financial pressure, and endure social hierarchies because they believe that at the end of the day they will return to emotional safety. But when the relationship itself becomes the primary source of tension, something fundamental shifts inside them. They stop feeling like leaders. They stop feeling like protectors. They begin to feel monitored, judged, and subtly inadequate. One of the most common patterns that disrupts peace is chronic emotional volatility. When a relationship becomes a constant cycle of emotional highs and lows, when minor issues are amplified into existential threats, when disagreements escalate into character assassinations, the man's nervous system never truly relaxes. He may not articulate it clearly, but his body feels it. He becomes hyper-aware. He anticipates conflict. He edits himself before speaking. Over time, this self-editing transforms into emotional withdrawal. He stops sharing. He stops dreaming out loud. He stops revealing vulnerabilities because each revelation previously led to criticism rather than comfort. What began as openness becomes guarded silence. Another subtle destroyer of peace is perpetual dissatisfaction. When a man feels that no matter what he provides, it is never enough, his motivation shifts from inspiration to obligation. If every effort is met with comparison, if every achievement is minimized, if gratitude is rare but critique is constant, he internalizes a message that his value is conditional. Many men do not leave immediately. They double their effort. They work harder. They try to upgrade themselves. But if the goalpost keeps moving, exhaustion replaces ambition. Peace disappears not because of one dramatic betrayal, but because of thousands of small signals that he is perpetually falling short. Modern relationships also suffer from unspoken power struggles. In some dynamics, communication becomes less about understanding and more about control. If emotional expression is used as leverage, if tears become tools to win arguments, if vulnerability is extracted and later used as ammunition, trust deteriorates. A man who once felt strong begins to question his reality. He wonders whether he is truly flawed or simply constantly reframed as the villain. This psychological confusion is deeply destabilizing. Peace requires clarity. Without clarity, the mind never rests. There is also the phenomenon of public respect versus private criticism. A man can tolerate correction. He can accept feedback. But when respect is absent, when he feels belittled in front of others, mocked for his ambitions, or subtly emasculated through sarcasm, something in him hardens. Masculine camaraderie is built on mutual respect. When that respect is missing at home, resentment quietly accumulates. He may not argue, he may not explode, he may simply detach. And detachment is often mistaken for apathy when it is actually self-protection. Social media has intensified these dynamics. Comparison culture feeds dissatisfaction. External validation competes with internal intimacy. If a relationship becomes a performance for outsiders rather than a partnership between two people, authenticity fades. Some men feel that they are competing not only with other men, but with curated fantasies. If admiration is sought publicly while criticism is delivered privately, peace cannot survive. The relationship becomes a stage, not a sanctuary. It is important to recognize that when men say single men are free, they are not necessarily celebrating isolation. They are describing the absence of constant emotional negotiation. They are describing the relief of not being misunderstood daily. They are describing the calm of accountability being self-directed rather than externally imposed. A single man answers to his conscience, his mission, his values. He experiences loneliness, yes, but he also experiences uninterrupted clarity. His space is his own. His time is his own. His emotional state is not dictated by another person's fluctuating moods. However, the deeper truth beneath this conversation is not that women are inherently destructive to peace. It is that unresolved insecurity, unmet expectations, poor communication, and unhealed trauma can manifest in ways that destabilize relationships. When a woman feels unseen, unsupported, or fearful of abandonment, she may express it through control or criticism. When a man feels disrespected or unappreciated, he may respond with withdrawal or emotional shutdown. Both reactions create distance, but from the male perspective, especially in a culture that often discourages men from expressing emotional overwhelm, the internal pressure builds silently. Men are rarely taught to articulate emotional erosion. They endure it, they rationalize it. They tell themselves that this is simply what relationships are. Yet inside, their nervous system remains activated. They crave stillness. They crave appreciation. They crave partnership rather than opposition. When that craving goes unmet, they begin to romanticize solitude. Freedom becomes synonymous with peace because peace was absent in partnership. There is also the issue of constant testing. Some men feel that they are perpetually evaluated. Their loyalty is tested. Their ambition is tested. Their emotional strength is tested. While growth is healthy, perpetual testing creates fatigue. A relationship should be a collaboration, not an exam. When love feels conditional upon performance, the man eventually questions whether he is loved for who he is, or for how well he passes invisible trials. Financial pressure adds another layer. Many men carry a deep-seated belief that their worth is tied to provision. If financial struggles are met with contempt rather than encouragement, shame intensifies. Shame is corrosive. It does not inspire productivity. It diminishes confidence. A man who feels financially judged may internalize failure even when he is trying his best. Peace requires emotional safety during vulnerability. Without it, stress compounds. The idea that single men are free also stems from autonomy. Autonomy is not selfishness. It is psychological oxygen. When decisions are constantly second-guessed, when hobbies are criticized, when friendships are discouraged, a man's world shrinks. Over time, he may comply to avoid conflict, but compliance breeds quiet resentment. Freedom, in contrast, feels expansive. He can pursue interests without negotiation. He can rest without explanation. He can exist without defense. Yet the narrative must be nuanced. Not all relationships destroy peace. Many cultivate it. The difference lies in mutual respect, emotional maturity, and shared values. A woman who understands a man's need for space does not interpret silence as rejection. A woman who appreciates effort fosters motivation. A woman who communicates directly rather than indirectly reduces confusion. Similarly, a man who listens without defensiveness and leads with integrity strengthens stability. Peace is not gendered, it is constructed. For men aged 25 to 45 who feel lost or disrespected, the critical realization is this: peace should not be a luxury reserved for single life. It should be a baseline expectation in partnership. If a relationship consistently produces anxiety, self-doubt, and emotional exhaustion, introspection is necessary. Not in a spirit of blame, but in pursuit of clarity. What patterns are repeating? What boundaries were never set? What standards were compromised in the name of love? The slightly conspiratorial tone many men adopt when discussing these issues stems from feeling unheard. They sense that their grievances are dismissed or labeled as weakness. Yet male emotional fatigue is real. When a man's inner world is destabilized, his external performance declines. He becomes less focused, less driven, less inspired. Peace is not passive comfort. It is fuel for purpose. Ultimately, the contrast between chaotic relationships and single freedom forces a profound question. Is love enhancing your life or destabilizing it? If partnership amplifies strength, sharpens focus, and deepens calm, it is aligned with peace. If it erodes confidence, fractures concentration, and breeds constant tension, something is misaligned. The solution is not cynicism. It is discernment. It is choosing relationships rooted in respect rather than drama, admiration rather than competition, stability rather than volatility. The modern man must redefine peace as non-negotiable, not silence at any cost, not avoidance of conflict, but emotional steadiness. He must recognize that companionship should feel like reinforcement, not resistance. When he understands this, he no longer views singleness as the only path to freedom. He sees that true freedom is internal. It is the ability to walk away from dynamics that compromise his mental stability. It is the courage to demand reciprocity. It is the discipline to cultivate self-worth independent of validation. In the end, peace is not destroyed by women as a category. It is disrupted by unresolved dynamics between individuals. But from the male perspective, when those dynamics consistently undermine his sense of self, the experience feels deeply personal. And until he experiences a relationship that honors his need for respect, autonomy, and emotional safety, single life will continue to feel like liberation. The challenge, then, is not to avoid love, but to seek a version of it that protects rather than provokes, that stabilizes rather than shakes, that feels like a sanctuary rather than a battlefield.